Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the ESL Hearthstone Legendary Series. This is week number 3 of the 4 total weeks of Legendary Series. My name is TJ Osmo Cutie Sanders, joined by Kevin Monk Dong. How you doing, man?
Doing great, because after WCA, I thought I'd never get to cast with you again, but now my dreams have come true.
I'm sure that the community is getting tired of seeing our faces right next to each other. But of course, I mentioned this is week number 3. We should probably go over the format for the Legendary Series because it's been a couple weeks since we've had the last broadcast. For Season 2, we've actually moved to a bi-monthly format. That means 2 Challenger Cups and 2 Legendary Series match days a month. One week there's a Challenger Cup. The top 6 players from each week's Challenger Cup join 2 invited players to play in the Legendary Series match day. The winner of each of the 4 weeks of the Legendary Series match day go to the Season 2 LAN Finals on June 5th, 6th, and 7th. That is a 16-player LAN Final, so the 4 winners of each week will be joined by 4 players from the Redemption Tournament on May 14th through 17th, and of course, 8 players from the Last Chance Open on May 23rd and 24th.
Now, we do have to remind the viewers that the Last Chance Open will actually be NA only, North American players only, and that's not because we hate European or Asian players, but because the LAN is actually going to be the week directly after, so it's going to be really hard for players to get visas, to get flights from foreign countries into the United States. So if you are from Europe or if you are from Asia, the last chance for you to qualify is actually going to be on May 2nd to May 3rd. That is Challenger Cup number 3, and we wish you guys good luck there.
Yeah,
Number 4, sorry.
Number 4, yeah, that will be the final opportunity. So that is next week, so make sure that you sign up for that as quick as you can because it is first come, first serve for that tournament. And of course, best of 5 conquests all the way through. And Monk, why don't you give us a little bit of rundown of what actually Conquest is?
Well, of course, I'm pretty sure everyone in the Hearthstone community these days is familiar with Conquest. It is the format that Blizzard has introduced for BlizzCon this year. It's going to be best of 5, just like last year's standing, but the main difference is that when you lose with a deck, you actually get to play it again.
Indeed. So it makes it so there's a wider variety of decks because you have to have 3 solid decks. You can end up losing a match if you have one weak deck because you'll never be able to find a win with it. So also, we'd like to give a big shout out to our sponsors. Plantronics and Gigabyte have joined us for Season 2 of the Legendary Series. We have a lot of stuff in store with the Redemption Qualifier, the Last Chance Qualifier, and of course the Season 2 LAN Finals. And none of the cool stuff we'll be able to do would be possible without these wonderful sponsors. So if you're looking to pick up any new computer gear, make sure you check out those links below on those plates and head over and support those guys and support esports. Also, make sure you follow us on Twitter at ESL Hearthstone. You can also use the hashtag HLS throughout the weekend. And let us know if you have any predictions. Let us know what you think of the players or the games, and we'll be checking those tweets periodically and seeing what you guys think. And of course, as always, we have our giveaway for the week. Head over to esl.gg/legendarywk3. We will be giving away packs to some lucky players who enter that raffle, so it's always good to have some packs.
Yeah, an indeterminate number of packs, but packs will be given.
Packs will be given, exactly. We don't know exactly how many packs, but it will be at least 1 pack. Yeah. Probably up to 50, but at least 1. And we should probably take a look at the groups for the day, if we can bring up the group bracket on the screen. So, Monk, why don't you take us through these groups?
Well, Group A, first, the qualified players are Kabi, Ostkaka, Lead Paint, and Savitz will be the invited player of Group A. Group B, we have Ignite, Chang, and 2 Wet as the qualified players, and Chalky as the invited player. So, pretty interesting groups. Pretty interesting that we have qualified players who are very known as well. Ostkaka and Ignite, they qualified for C-Story Cup, and they kind of repeated their performance for the ESL Legendary Series, qualifying yet again.
Yeah, and those players actually met each other in the round of 8 of the most recent Seed Story Cup, and it was a really close match, but Ostkaka took that. And Ostkaka will be playing in our first match of the day. It will be from Group A, Kabi versus Ostkaka. So Ostkaka is a player that is pretty well known, but hasn't really had too many huge tournament breakout performances. He's well known for being high on the ladder and making through open qualifiers. But what else do you know about Ostkaka?
Well, Ostkaka means cheesecake.
It does.
That is probably the most interesting fun fact about Ostkaka that I know. But yeah, like you said, he's kind of like a player that maybe the public generally doesn't know. But behind the scenes, he's regarded by like pretty much every single player as one of the best both in ladder and in tournaments. He's known for his freeze mage play, which a lot of people consider him being one of the best freeze mage players in the world. And we do see indeed that he is going to be bringing mage to the tournament.
And of course, Kabi, on the other hand, UTR is under the radar. It's one of the practice groups containing players like Azuzu, which we saw last week in the Legendary Series, Phone Tap. Zixo is also part of that group. Razor, who is renowned for creating Math Warrior. Kabi's a pretty unknown player from Argentina. And he's had a few top 100 legend finishes. And of course, he's looking to try and make it in the Hearthstone scene. He says it's hard for him because from Argentina, he can't really stream because the internet infrastructure isn't as good. So he doesn't have good enough internet to stream. So open qualifiers like this that can make a name for himself are ways that players like Kabi make it through. So a really cool story for both these players.
I have to give it up for ESL for hosting so many open tournaments that give players so many chances to qualify to make a name for themselves. Against Ostkaka, if he can defeat Ostkaka, the second place finisher from C-Story Cup, that'll be pretty huge. And if he makes it to the next stage even, or even to the LAN finals, that'll be a pretty nice experience for him. A lot of the players in our tournaments, they've actually never been outside of their countries before. So getting to travel to a foreign country to play Hearthstone, that's pretty much the dream. Especially
to Southern California. It doesn't really get much better than that. The finals will be held in the beginning of the summer. It might be a little bit hot, but probably a nice change for a lot of these players. So first matchup is going to be Warrior versus Warrior. And in the past, I mean, we probably would have said that this might be Control Warrior versus Control Warrior, but Grim Patron Warrior is sort of the new kid on the block, and a lot of pro players have been saying that this deck is super popular.
Yeah, it has become super popular lately, but judging from these two hands, I believe this is going to be just standard Control Warrior versus Control Warrior. Certainly probably your favorite matchup, TJ.
Oh yes, it's it's really interesting and sometimes a little bit of a complex matchup. On the surface, it may seem quite boring because there's a lot of armoring up. There's a lot of, it's usually a very slow play. But in the Warrior versus Warrior matchup, the natural progression of things is there's usually like one aggressor and one warrior that plays more defensively. And so sometimes it can make for some exciting games.
Yeah, there's also a lot of interesting mind games in Warrior versus Warrior because generally, if you want to be the defensive player, that usually means you want to have the deck that's bigger, that has more legendaries, more big cards. And we can see in Kabi's hand that he has Gorehowl, which means that's one of the big bombs that players who are building Warrior decks to be better against like Hunters or aggro decks, they might not have. So that's maybe an indication that Kabi is looking more to go to the late game.
Yeah, the greedier player, a lot of times in Warrior vs. Warrior, the player with the heaviest hitting deck, usually comes out on top. But there's a lot of also weird turns early on where both players are sort of afraid to make a move because they don't want to just throw away important cards like Acolyte of Pain or like the Armor Smith. Usually the player that gets the most value out of Acolyte of Pain and gets a lot, and if they can get a big card advantage early on with cards like that, they can have a big advantage. So a lot of times you'll just see players throwing out small threats just to sort of test the waters for cards like Death Bite.
Oh, actually, I was mistaken before. It's Ostkaka that actually has the Gorehowl. And he's definitely has, judging from these decks, maybe the bigger deck. Of course, Kabi does have the Baron Ged in his hand, but generally that card isn't as good in the mirror because it is 5 HP, and it actually can be dealt with the card like Gorehowl. And the Gorehowl in this matchup, sometimes it can go something like 4 for 1 even.
Yeah, so the players' webcams won't move, so the players whose turn it is will be indicated by the green glow, and the hands will flip every time. It's a little bit different than some tournament formats that some of you may be used to, so probably good to explain it.
Double Armor Smith. Okay. Now, I've talked to like famous Control Warrior players like Sho or Fibonacci about this matchup, and a lot of them actually do prefer to play on the aggressive style. That being said, if Kabi goes on the aggressive, it probably won't turn out really good for him because Ostkaka, he kind of has all the answers in terms of weapons. Weapons are the answers that you need in the mid game to take care of mid-range cards like Armor Smith, Sludge Belcher, Pilot Shredder, or even Shield Maiden on turn 6.
Yeah, so this is looking pretty good for Ostkaka. He's got being able to clear off these Armor Smiths early He's also going to have a chance here to throw it on Acolyte of Pain to start drawing, if he so chooses. It'll also force out the second Despite because you want to deny the second draw.
Yeah, this seems like a perfect turn for Acolyte of Pain. Normally, some newer players might think to throw down a Sludge Belcher on curve, but then you're kind of feeding the Sludge Belcher to your opponent.
Yeah.
Probably not what you want.
Either way, that Despite is going into whatever creature you play. Because of Acolyte of Pain, you don't want to attack anything other than it because you're giving your opponent 3 draws as long as he attacks in instead of just 2. So denying that draw could be really important here.
Yeah. I think Acolyte of Pain will probably be the play, but after that, I think maybe Ostkaka is considering either just armoring up or using the Cruel Taskmaster. If he does this, he's basically trading the Cruel Taskmaster for a card, because Kabi will be able to deal with this fairly easily. Okay, so he doesn't decide to attack with the Armorsmith, so that makes it actually a little bit more difficult for Kabi to clear the board. Makes it a bit more awkward even.
Yeah. This is a little bit interesting, actually, if only because he held on to the Despite charge last turn, so this turn is going to be super tough for him. I guess not really. Now that he traded in the Armorsmith damage as well.
Ostkaka was trying to keep the Deathspite in order to prevent something like a Sludge Belcher or to prevent Shield Maiden from going down.
Yeah.
But this might be a situation where he has to clear this because the Acolyte of Pain can be very threatening if Kabi has the Cruel Taskmaster in his hand as well.
Yeah. And his hand is a little bit awkward. He's going to have to float a mana here with the Sludge Belcher, but he is going to be able to deal with this. Now, of course, like you said, he doesn't have that second charge of the Despite to be able to deal with something like this Sludge Belcher, but does have Coin Dr. Boom.
And also he has the Emperor.
Emperor Thorsan, yeah.
I mean, on turn
Even
6,
better.
On turn 6, you have the Emperor and you have a Coin Dr. Boom. What more can you ask for, right? Now, Kabi's hoping here that Ostkaka doesn't have a way to deal with this, but fortunately for Ostkaka, he does have Gorehowl. And this is kind of the advantages of going first in the Warrior Mirror. Again, I've talked to Fibonacci about this, and he says going first in the Warrior Mirror is actually just an insanely huge advantage because you're able to deal with, for example, if you play Sludge Belcher first, your opponent, if he goes first, he can just throw a Shield Maiden into that, and then you're kind of behind. It's exactly the same here. Ostkaka has the opportunity to deal with Kabi's turn 6 play with a turn 7 weapon. Oftentimes, it's just the answers are 1 more mana ahead of the questions that the opponent is asking.
Especially, I was trying to experiment with Ren Blackhand.
How'd that end up for you?
Not good. Not good at all. There was one time where I was able to kill an Emperor Thorsan, and that was it. There was so many times where I had Ren Blackhand in my hand, and either Emperor or Dr. Boom was played on turn 6 or 7, but I didn't have a dragon in my hand. And there was a lot of games where just set dead in my hand for so long. Well, I still want to try it out more, and once all the cards are released, I think it might be a little in a better spot, but
I think your problem is you're not running 29 dragons in your deck.
I think so. Only way he'll be balanced is if you run 29 dragons. Speaking of dragons, Kabi, we can see, runs the Ysera, so seems like a little bit more late game with that deck.
Yeah, it's just another example of a card that brings the warrior more late game. So even though Ostkaka, he has the Gorehowl, Kabi with the Ysera, he might think that his deck is more late game. But if one of the players has Gorehowl and Ysera, those are kind of the 2 key cards in Warrior Mirror, the ones that can potentially get the most value.
Yeah, and a lot of players, when they put in Ysera nowadays, they get rid of what a lot of people would have said was a staple card in Control Warrior in Alex Straza. A lot of players used to think Alex Straza was one of your only win conditions where you'd Alex Straza and set up a big Grom turn following it. But a lot of players have been cutting it because matches seem to be becoming more grindy, and just getting more value out of those creatures like Ysera can sometimes be even better than having the ability to combo or having Alex Straza as maybe like a defensive tool. So it's really interesting to see that evolve where it used to be considered one of the most important cards in the deck, and now players are just considering cutting it over another big threat like Ysera.
Yeah, certainly. I guess the basically players are getting rid of Alexstrasza and the potential 15 damage it deals, and also even Ragnaros, because your freeze mage matchup is already really good, so you don't need Ragnaros, and you don't want too many targets in your deck that are so vulnerable to BGH.
Yeah. Ysera is really tough to remove for a lot of the decks that are popular right now.
Oh, this is probably the most value you'll ever get out of Baron Geddon.
Yeah.
Generally, again, not a card that gets a lot of value in this matchup, but if you play this matchup a lot, you'll see, okay, my opponent BGH, okay, I'm going to throw Baron Geddon out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy if it just gets a cool Taskmaster most of the time. Cool Taskmaster and BGH is sort of just like a bonus.
Yeah, again, you can see one of the reasons Baron Geddon probably isn't the best card in the matchup, it's because 5 attack weapons can deal with it really easily. It's not a legendary that necessitates a shield slam or an execute to deal with, for instance.
Yeah.
And wow, Kabi certainly with a greedy deck, both Ragnaros and Ysera, so he has a choice of the litter.
Yeah.
In terms of legendaries.
To be honest, I think you'd value Ysera more in this matchup. So throwing out Rag first to try and maybe bait out some more removal. You've seen BGH already. You've seen your opponent use a Gorehowl hit the previous turn to try and deal with it. And so trying to protect your Ysera by making the Rag eat maybe whatever removal your opponent has left in their hand is probably the better choice.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we do see actually Ostkaka, he does have 2 forms of removal here. The question is, which one will he choose to use? Shield Slam, from what we can see, would probably be the better choice.
Yeah.
Because if Ysera comes down on the next turn, then Shield Slam, there's probably no way it can deal 12 damage from the current hand that Ostkaka has.
Yeah, definitely agree. Ooh. And a lot of times, I think you want to use the armor while you can. He doesn't have reliable ways to gain armor in his hand. He has Armor Smith, but a lot of times that won't be that great of a tool, especially on-demand armor.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, if Ysera does come out, then it's going to be really tough for him to have to deal with this.
Oh, yeah, certainly. Ostkaka did this move because playing the Alexstrasza and playing the Execute on the previous turn, because if he played Shield Slam, he would have needed to armor up, so he wouldn't be able to fit in the Alexstrasza. Unfortunately, this is pretty much the perfect answer for Kabi.
Yeah.
Being able to, with the help of Emperor Thorzen, he's able to kill off the Alexstrasza and throw down his Ysera on the same turn. Now we can see there's pretty much no way for Ostkaka to deal with this Ysera except with
Brawl.
YOLO Brawl.
I mean, you're not really going to get that much value out of Brawl. Usually when you're using Brawl in the mirror matchup again as Control Warrior, you're using it to try and clear one big threat off the board. You're using it as pretty much a single target removal or potential single target removal.
Yeah.
And he does have Armor Smith, so that's the ultimate combo, the Armor Smith and Brawl. You're almost guaranteed to win.
Usually you use Brawl against, like in this matchup against perhaps Dr. Boom, but now that you've already seen Dr. Boom, I think this is the most value you'll ever get out of Brawl, and this might be the turning point in this match.
Here we go. If Ysera comes out of this, Kabi's in a great spot.
Oh.
The Unstable Ghoul wins. Wow. That is rough.
Kabi can't believe it.
Super rough. Now, the one thing, though, is Kabi still has some decent threats. I mean, he did, of course, get one card out of the Ysera, and it is Emerald Drake, which is still a big threat. That's pretty tough to deal with, especially if you don't have a lot of removal left, if you no longer have the BGH. And now he's going to be able to remove all the armor. And, of course, since he had to use Brawl the last turn, he's sort of saying, well, you probably don't have Execute in your hand, and I know you're not going to be able to Shield Slam. He has no way to remove this.
Yeah, and I think it's not it yet, because Kabi doesn't have any more damage from his hand. But it's certainly a very tenuous situation that I don't think Ostkaka can deal with.
Yeah.
Just throw everything on the board, see what sticks, and hope your opponent doesn't have a weapon or a Cruel Taskmaster in his hand.
Yeah. Looking pretty good for Kabi right now. He's probably going to have a couple opportunities to draw into what he needs to win the game.
Yeah, Ostkaka, he's hoping to draw into his own Grom so he can lethal his opponent on the next turn if Kabi doesn't have a weapon. But Kabi, he has Shield Block and he has a Belcher, so that plan is certainly not going to work.
Kabi's trying to calculate here what would be the best option. If he Sludge Belchers here, he protects his Grom just a slight bit more. I mean, not that it would really matter because he's at 2 health. Anything that could possibly be used to kill that Grom would have to be like an execute or like shield block into armor up, into shield, into armor smith in, into shield slam. So it's really tough.
Yeah. Kabi's deciding, does he want to play safe or does he want to go with the Emerald Drake for just slightly more power? He goes with this play because there's no way for the Warrior to lethal you from this point anyway. And, ooh, just a bit late.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's going to be it.
Yeah. And
If Kabi had played the Sludge Belcher, I think, yeah, there's a possibility he would have survived.
yeah, there was. So that was a really smart choice here. Putting him on, having removal, and he is going to concede. So Kabi is going to take game number 1 in that Warrior Mirror.
Yeah. It's pretty much that game was about the Asera, the Emperor Thorzen, getting the Asera down to 8 mana and being able to do such a crucial turnaround in the game.
Yeah, the greedier deck, the more grindy deck, I guess. The Alexstrasza really didn't do that much. That 15 damage was sort of inconsequential when Ostkaka used it. You can tell by running the Unstable Ghoul, he probably cut something from the higher end of his curve. And that could have been a Ysera that might have made the matchup a little bit closer. But of course, Kabi is going to take that victory. He still has Druid and Hunter left to win with. And of course, Ostkaka has all of his decks left to choose from, Rogue, Mage, and Warrior.
Yeah, so that Unstable Ghoul, it's certainly going to be pretty good against Hunters, for instance.
Oh, for sure.
The Gorehowl, it could potentially be good against Druids if he's able to stabilize early. So even though the tech choices that he made against the Warrior maybe weren't the best because we didn't see a Ysera from him, the tech choices might it might pay out for him in future matches.
All right, so next match is going to be Ostkaka's Mage versus Kabi's Hunter. And Ostkaka, when I was talking to him earlier in the week, he was pretty confident in his Mage play. He considers himself one of the best freeze Mage players in the world. And a lot of his peers as well, a lot of the people that he plays with a lot, especially Zixo is really vocal about it, says Ostkaka is, even though he's not, maybe not as well known as some of the premier tournament players, maybe he hasn't had as many results in those premier tournaments as other players, a lot of the pros regard him as being one of the best players in the world.
Yeah, and Zixo would know best after all. Zixo actually lived with Ostkaka for about 3 months at the Root House.
Yeah.
It was their trip together.
They're buddies.
Yeah, they're great buddies.
They're buddies.
Yeah, it was really interesting for Zixo to go to see Story Cup, and he said, even though I want to win this this tournament, I want Ostkaka to win more.
Yeah, and he got really close. Losing to Orange and really close.
Game 9, final Game 9.
Game 9, yeah. A lot of times you don't hear Game 9 because most tournaments do best of 7 grand finals. But
oh, this is great. It might even be mid-range Hunter here instead of the standard Phase Hunter.
Yeah.
And I feel like mid-range Hunter has a much better matchup than Phase Hunter because it's able to put out threats, and threats that are very sticky indeed with death rattles. For example, Pilot Shredder has a death rattle.
Yeah.
The turn 5 play is usually Lotheb from mid-range Hunter. Then you have high mains that have death rattles. And of course, you top it off with either Dr. Boom or Ragnaros.
Yeah, those sticky threats basically, it's the difference between just doing a lot of damage from your hand or doing a moderate amount of damage from your hand like Face Hunter does, or having a board that threatens a lot of damage and is really, really hard to remove. Because most Face Hunter threats can just be removed with a ping. And a lot of times, the mid-range Hunters at the end of the game have more reach. So instead, when you get to a point where a defensive Alexstrasza completely wins the game for a Freeze Mage against Face Hunter, sometimes it's not the case against mid-range.
Yeah, mid-range can always finish up on higher curves. There's just so many more higher value cards for mid-range Hunter that Freeze Mage oftentimes can't deal with. We saw in the WCA tournament, for example, Amaz brought mid-range Hunter, and he did so well with it against a player like Dog. His lineup was actually really focused at defeating Freeze Mage. He brought Druid, he brought Warrior, and he brought mid-range Hunter, and those were some of the most perfect counters against Freeze Mage. He was very successful there with that deck.
Yeah, you could see Kabi, right as he saw his mulligans, he actually winced a little bit because he definitely was not happy with his hand. Being stuck with Explosive Trap and Freezing Trap is nearly useless against a Freeze Mage. It's because they're not going to play creatures. And even the creatures that they do play, they don't even value attacking with them, so they don't have any reason to ever check into a trap most of the time.
Yeah. You mentioned that a lot of people consider Ostkaka one of the best freeze mage players, and I can definitely attest to that. When I was watching him play at Sea Cup, especially in the group stages, he was certainly like he was making very next level plays that even StrifeCro was impressed with when he was commentating Ostkaka.
I was talking to him and asking him what he thinks the difference is between top-level freeze mage players and just mid-range like okay freeze mage players, and he says it's small things. We talked about it earlier in the week on one of our other casts, but small things like attacking in with your mad scientist before you draw to reduce the likelihood that you draw a secret in those draws, like an arcane intellect. So that it basically gives you an extra draw on turns where you otherwise wouldn't get an extra draw. And other things like making sure you think 4 turns ahead instead of just saying, what's the most damage I can do this turn? Or what's the best position I can put myself in this turn? Say, what's the best position I can put myself in that's going to set me up to win in 4 or 5 turns?
Yeah. For example, we saw Reynad play Freeze Mage earlier this week in the WCA tournament.
Yeah.
And an issue he had was oftentimes he would overdraw cards, and he would actually get cards burned.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons he lost was perhaps like not thinking ahead and getting Alex Straza burned.
Yeah. And you can say all you want, well, it was unlucky to have Alex Straza burned. Well, there's situations earlier in the game where you could have said, well, I need to be smarter with how I burn my cards and not have any cards burned at all to not risk maybe burning an Alex Straza.
Yeah, very true. Doomsayers, it's relevant, but the issue is that there is a Hunter's Mark in Kabi's hand, which is the exact card that he needs.
Yeah, and also, even if Doomsayer goes off, it's likely that it'll put nearly the same amount of power on the board.
And then there's often times where perhaps Lore Walker Cho even comes out. What's going to come out? Oh, Craze Alchemist? That's going to be a pretty standard one. We saw Dog in the Kingwin Pro League. He was going to win the game, but then a Lore Walker Cho found itself on the other side of the board, and he just couldn't win because all he had in his hand were spells, and he couldn't give his opponent like Ice Block or Frostbolt, and that would have been game losing. Yeah,
and he was in a rough spot already, but that was just sort of the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, that's actually going to be a huge draw Animal Companion. Kabi, pretty much he's going to have to be top decking for the rest of the game because his hand is just looking terrible at the moment.
Yeah, it's really rough. Again, like we mentioned, those traps are useless just because Freeze Mage has a reason to ever check into a trap, and that's what a lot of times mid-range Shunner relies on. That they usually run a little bit more traps, sometimes maybe 2 freezing trap and explosive, or 2 freezing and a snake, or 1 of each, which is more than Face Hunter. So a lot of times they rely on getting extra Eagle Horn bow charges with those traps. Makes their damage go a lot farther, and in Freeze Mage that's not something that they can rely on.
Yeah, that being said, this Ragros, that's going to be a key card later down in the game. But yeah, this freezing trap, it's actually going to be fairly huge because it's going to deny this mad scientist.
Yeah.
And not only is it going to deny a secret, but now Ostkaka will have a difficult time killing off this Misha with the Blizzard.
Yeah, Blizzard's going to do here is just sort of stall this damage out. Ice Barrier, pretty key card in the matchup, whether it be Face Hunter or Mid-Range Hunter. Just that extra health gain can sometimes be the difference.
Yeah, in Phase Hunter, it's even so much more better because all Phase Hunter tries to do is get damage to your face, whereas here, the Phase Hunter is getting more recursive damage on your face with minions already on the board.
Yeah.
So you just can't like block 8 damage. You're like, huh, I stopped 2 of your cards with 1 of my cards.
Mm-hmm. So Kabi can even deny the secret even further by killing off this Loot Hoarder, which is going to be the smarter play.
Plus, he just wants to get rid of cards in his hand.
Yeah.
Quick Shot's actually going to be surprisingly useful here.
Yeah. Rag as well. Rag is one of the strongest cards against Freeze Mage, no matter what class you're playing, just because Rag can't be frozen. I mean, that effect's still going to go off every turn. There's no way besides just straight up killing that Rag, which takes a Fireball and then ping over 2 turns, or a Fireball and Frostbolt. It's just really tough to remove him.
Yeah, what do you think about that Quick Shot play? That was actually surprising to me.
Well, he wants to put as much pressure on as possible, I guess, and he knows that he's not going to be able to get value to that Quick Shot for at least a turn, like the actual draw value out of the Quick Shot. He might even be able to pop the block next turn, which I think is going to be what he's trying to set up for.
Yeah, maybe he thinks, okay, maybe my opponent clears my board the next turn, and if he does, I and he plays Ice Barrier as well, then I won't actually be able to pop the block. Whereas with this, he's more guaranteed to have a chance to pop the block just with Ragnaros alone.
Yeah. And he actually can do it as well. He can play around the Ice Barrier here. He'll have to clear as much as possible, and being able to kill Mad Scientist as well with both secrets up. You know that these secrets aren't going to give him any value. So it's basically just a 2/2 body that's on the board.
Yep. Señor del Fuego is going to come down, and unfortunately, not really too many answers from Ostkaka here. Ragnaros is kind of the card that you want to tech in against Freeze Mages, and it's actually pretty smart from Kabi because, as you said, Ostkaka is a very known Freeze Mage player, and it might just be good to, as Kabi, a player who's more unknown, just to win one match, kind of target his opponent and get his name out there that way.
Indeed. So looking rough for Ostkaka. He's gonna, he has to develop Ice Block here, just because there's no way for him to take out the Rag this turn. He knows that he's gonna take 8 damage from the shot, so I mean, what can he even draw into with Arcane Intellect that will help him win even after he gets his block pop the following turn?
He needs to find some way to either kill his opponent in the next 2 turns or to kill off this Rag and I guess get some damage off with Ice Barrier. But the issue is with right here, whenever Kabi draws his kill command, he's pretty much going to win the game. I just don't see a turn where Alexstrasza will be able to come out safely against this kind of board.
Yeah, Kabi's looking like he's feeling pretty good right about now.
All right, so it's just setting up for the Blizzard in the next turn.
Yeah. And
oh no. Well, so like we said, these are pretty much the 2 cards you want the most against Freeze Mage, Dr. Boom and Ragnaros. So even if the board is cleared, Ostkaka is not going to stand any chance.
yeah.
Ragnaros will do 8 every single turn. Dr. Boom, he'll also do 8 on 1 turn with the Boom bots, right?
Indeed.
8 direct damage.
Yeah, about 8. Yeah, that's what it seems. And of course, since Ice Block can't be triggered on your own turn, not that it would matter anymore, Dr. Boom can sometimes be really hard to remove for Freeze Mage when they're at low health.
Yeah, so he's going to be able to somewhat freeze/clear the board, but after Dr. Boom comes out, even if Kabi didn't have Dr. Boom, he still had the chance to weave in hero powers, and Ostkaka would kind of been on some kind of clock, I guess. So again, the issue is he can't clear this Dr. Boom. And what if he Alexstrasza himself? I guess if he Alexstrasza himself, the Ice Barrier will actually go into effect.
Yeah.
Ice Lance is actually pretty good too.
Yeah, this is, I mean, he's found himself to be in an okay position. But the thing is, he doesn't really have any creatures, so, oh man, yeah, that's just so rough.
Yeah, Kabi's just drawing big creature after big creature, just all his threats.
Yeah.
And I think you should attack here. You're probably going to get more damage out of your board rather than the Freeze Mage can block with his Ice Barrier, which is 8 damage total.
He might be waiting to attack just because he might be waiting until he has lethal even through Ice Barrier, just to reduce the opportunity that his opponent will draw into a second Ice Barrier and be able to play that for an extra 8 health. But that's really risky because his board might just get cleared.
I mean,
and lose damage.
How does this board get cleared though? That's the big question.
I have no idea.
You can't even use the Alexstrasza to attack anything because it's going to get frozen back into your hand.
Yeah.
And
his best choice might be to try and set up... Oh, he's dead. He's dead the next turn.
Needs a Frost Nova? No.
Yeah, he can't ping his Acolyte and Doomsayer.
There's actually no way for him to get a Frost Nova this turn and have the mana to play it.
He can Doomsayer and try and Frostbolt one of these big targets like Dr. Boom to try and reduce the amount of damage that he'll take. But there would only need to be, even if he... this Boom...
Oh, wow. It's not Doomsayer. The issue is, even if it were Doomsayer, Ostkaka would still be in a problematic situation.
Yeah. So he's got to try and reduce as much damage on the board as possible. So 12 damage, 13, 14 damage.
Oh,
that is going to do
kill
it.
Command.
Yep.
So it was kind of inevitable at that point. Ostkaka did a really good job of preventing lethal for as long as he could, but Unfortunately, that's it, and Ostkaka's Freeze Mage will go down 0-2.
Yeah, pretty rough for him. Down 2-0 in a series. Kabi only has to win with Druid. And he's put himself in a pretty good position to win with Druid. Druid is known for not really having too many super weak matchups because of the way Wild Growth and Innervate work. A lot of times they can get off to really big, rampy starts that gives them, at worst, like a 40% chance to win, and most likely a 60% chance to win against a lot of classes, including Freeze Mage.
Yeah, now that I noticed the lineups, actually, Kabi's lineup is the exact lineup that Amaz used to get out of his group in WCA, and it was that lineup which specifically targeted Freeze Mage.
Yeah.
Druid, mid-range Druid, which is one of the best counters, Warrior, which is the best counter in the game, and mid-range Hunter, which not many people think of as a counter, but once you see the cards that are in that deck, High Mains, Dr. Boom, Ragnaros, yeah, I would say that's a pretty good counter. Probably the best 3 counters in the game right now.
Yeah, and judging by the players that are in this tournament, if you just go by the players that you can actually get like public information off of, like Chalky and Ostkaka, and even Savich sometimes to a certain extent.
And Ignite is also a really big Freeze Mage player.
Yeah, so you can. That's a really great deck choice, or a really great lineup choice by Kabi to sort of predict that Freeze Mage is going to be really popular and make it really tough for Freeze Mage to take victories. So next match number 3, Kabi is 1 game away from moving on to the winners match of Group A. And Ostkaka, of course, he's going to throw out the Rogue there. He needs a 3-0 if he wants to move to the winners match.
Yeah, it's certainly possible, but I would say that actually he has to go through 3 unfavorable matchups. After Emperor Thorozan, I think many people would say that Druid is favored over Rogue, just ever so slightly.
Yeah.
It's certainly favored over Freeze Mage, and it's certainly favored over Warrior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So a very uphill battle for Ostkaka going to the next match.
Yeah, of course. We didn't really explain it as much earlier, but these are sort of double elimination GSL style groups. So even if Ostkaka loses this first match, he'll go down to the elimination match, but that doesn't mean he's out. He'll have a chance to move through. He'll just have to win more matches in order to qualify for the playoff stage tomorrow if he does lose this match.
Yeah, ESL is all about second chances.
Indeed.
Double elimination brackets, second chance tournaments, right?
Yeah, it's we're trying to reward the players that make it through that open bracket, so it's a really tough thing to do. And players like Lead Paint, which we'll see later, who's made it through twice, it's really impressive stuff. And these guys both were players who made it through that pretty big open bracket, so they already have accomplished a lot, even up to this point. Looking at these hands, pretty bad hand for Kabi, maybe except for one of those innervates.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Ostkaka, it's an interesting hand, I would say, and it all depends on which of the cards you value. So I think the cards that you want the most in your opening hands are things like perhaps Violet Teacher, because that's one of the cards that can really get you going. The combination of Backstab and SI Agent is all right too, and Sap for any really early innervate plays will be another good one. But really, the combo that you want is Violet Teacher, Preparation, and either Sap or Eviscerate, and those 3 cards combined, if the Druid player doesn't have Wild Growth, the Rogue player can just snowball ahead. It's kind of like an auto win if Rogue has that exact combination of cards.
Yeah, this is a really great start for Kabi, though. Maybe not that BGH, but he's going to be able to put out an Ancient of Lore on turn 4, basically, since he had the Wild Growth start plus the Innervate. So he'll be able to ramp up and sort of refill his hand, which is a pretty ideal scenario.
Yeah, Kabi, he decides to hold the BGH. I think he assesses that it's too risky because of backstabs and SI agents that are almost certainly in Ostkaka's hand.
Yeah.
And not only that, but some rogues are going more minion-based these days, and that's kind of due to the innovations by a player named Mr. Yagut, who's pretty much known as one of the premier rogue streamers these days. He's adding in cards like Dr. Boom, cards like Sludge Belcher to make it more minion-based. Well, that's an interesting one. Ancient of War.
So this could be a heavy ramp Druid.
Yeah, we haven't seen Force of Nature or Savage Roar yet.
Yeah.
But there are mid-range Druids with combo and with Ancient of Lore going around.
Yeah.
Dog was a player who innovated that kind of deck, but so far it hasn't been in the scene that so much.
Yeah. There's a couple other cards that might indicate heavy ramp, maybe like Senjin Shield Masters.
Yeah. But the card that indicates heavy ramp is the good old Sunwalker.
The good old Sunwalker, indeed. So you can curve out with Senjin into Sludge Belcher or Druid of the Claw into Sunwalker into Ancient of War. Such a tough thing to deal with if you're playing against, or if you're playing as maybe a Face Hunter or a Zoo Warlock.
Yeah. Kabi, I think, is going to actually be fairly happy to see that sap because he knows that one sap is gone here. And also, Ostkaka, he won't be able to develop the board on the same turn as the sap. So, pretty much, even though sap is always good against Ancient of War, Kabi knows in the future, okay, I can probably throw down an Ancient of War on the next turn, and it'll be met with impunity.
Yeah. It's a little awkward, though, because he makes it so that next turn he probably would have played Ancient of War or Ancient of War anyway. But having the reduced Sludge Belcher, having those cards reduced for later turns, he probably won't get immediate value out of it, but he'll definitely get long-term value out of the Emperor Thorsan.
Yeah, now this is one of the big problems with playing Rogue. It's that you have hands that are too minion heavy or too spell heavy, and you really want a good mix of both. This just unfortunately doesn't work out. When you have such a good lead in terms of tempo early on, and you can't follow up that lead with like 4 drops and 5 drops, it just really hurts because you're giving up your big advantage that Rogue has.
Yeah, well, he is going to get immediate value out of it with the swipe plus the Sludge Belcher, a turn that was made possible by Emperor Thorsan.
This Druid deck is sponsored by Emperor Thorsan, of course.
Indeed. And of course, Plantronics and Gigabyte.
Well, yes. Well, that was actually a huge draw, Violet Teacher. Because now he actually has a minion, and not only that, like his hand is full of spells. I'm sure you can figure out some way to get 4 or 5 little tokens on the board after he's seen swipe.
Yeah. So probably making a big Violet Teacher play. He's trying to figure out which way is the best way to deal with this Sludge Belcher, and he can prep oil, but Deadly Poison seems like the more reliable option here.
Yeah, oil. Unfortunately, it's like kind of anti-synergetic with the Violet Teacher.
Yeah, I've had many times where I have like a lethal with oil as long as it goes on anything but one of the apprentices.
Yeah, so that was kind of more of the less all-in play. He could have done something like throw on 2 Deadly Poisons and also throw up a backstab to fully clear the board and summon more slimes, but he deems this is slightly less risky.
Yeah.
And that Ancient of War, it's going to be huge. There's no way to deal with it now except just throwing his face in there and using up a lot of spells.
Yeah, a lot of players in the days of when Ramp Druid was popular and Oil Rogue was pretty dominant, I think a couple months ago, players would say that Rogue was favored just because a lot of times they gained so much, a big early board advantage, a lot of tempo early on, and they could just continue that tempo by being able to efficiently deal with big targets like this with sap, or even just like small tokens on the board if they could build it up. But Ostkaka had a slow start in this one, and now he just doesn't have enough stuff in his hand to be able to deal with this Ancient of Lore efficiently, and his board wasn't big enough to where he could efficiently trade in and be able to take down this Ancient of War.
That 10 HP Ancient of War. Basically, what Ostkaka needed to do was for Kabi to misclick and have the Ancient of War go into a 10-5.
Uproot.
Yeah.
It's one of the things on my bucket list is to play Ancient of Lore and Uproot and have it be relevant.
Well, I would say this is almost certainly fairly all-in.
Indeed.
But you know what? He's seen a swipe. He's seen that his opponent can deal with this board, so hopefully no other swipe is drawn. And actually, okay, so this is going to be okay. But unfortunately, he's going to have to go through 2 Ancients of War.
Yeah, and since he used so many resources to get through that first one, it's going to be tough for him to actually get through the second one. Wow. Yeah. And clearing the Violet Teacher off, probably the smarter play, just so he can't make more tokens.
Yeah. Yet another not huge draw. And Ostkaka, he's going to be really sad at this point. He might even I didn't mean crying because he definitely needs a sprint here. He needs to refill his hand. There's just so much value in Kabi's hand where there's almost no value in Ostkaka's.
Yeah, turn 10, he's going to be able to play double 5-drop and then follow it up the next turn with an Ancient of Lore. And, I mean, there's also a chance that if Ostkaka tries to preemptively trade in some of these creatures to this big Ancient of War, which might not happen, but he does have the option of being able to heal it back up with Ancient of Lore. Which might actually happen.
Keeper of the Grove. I think it's just double 5-drop here.
Yeah. One of the strongest plays that you can make in Hearthstone is double 5-drop.
Yeah. Well, actually, now that I think of it, this Ancient of Lore, bringing Ancients of Lore, or rather Ancients of War to this tournament is fairly smart because there's going to be, you have to expect a lot of Zoo, possibly a lot of Face Hunter in this metagame. And the Ancients of War are just a perfect counter. In fact, back when Dog innovated the Ancients of War in mid-range Druid, it was when Zoo was popular and it was when Undertaker and just Undertaker Hunter was popular. But these Ancients of War have been kind of phased out now in the period when Undertaker got nerfed after Zoo and Undertaker Hunter kind of stepped out of the metagame.
And it's also sort of a next level choice just because of the fact that Black Knight is basically a tech card that's not seen often anymore. Maybe once Druids start to popularize Ancient of War again, it'll be a card that's teched into especially these some faster decks, or even some more control decks, maybe even like other Druids. But right now, Kabi bringing this is a really good read.
Yeah, not only that, but if he indeed has the combo in his deck, at least I would suspect one copy of the combo, it's also going to be potentially very good against Freeze Mage. So yeah, just a lot of tiny innovations in his deck are making this, making him very favorable, not only in this matchup, but throughout the whole series, and even possibly later on in future series.
On the other hand, if he's not running any piece of the combo, then his deck, well,
whoa,
I was going to say could be pretty weak to Freeze Mage, but Kazan Mystic probably increases that matchup tenfold. And also, this deck is probably insane against Hunter, Face Hunter. Yeah, Kazan Mystic and Ancient of Wars.
Now that you mention it, okay, so there's 2 Druids of the Claw, and this is the second Sludge Belcher.
Yeah.
So
I don't think there's combo.
Yeah, there might still be combo. I mean, there might just be one piece, one half of the combo, or one set of combo hiding in there. There's not something like 4 or 6 like Azure Drakes in there, right?
Yeah.
Ostkaka knows he's done for. He gives up. And
wow.
Wow, it's certainly unexpected. Kabi making a name for himself in the first match, taking it 3-0 against Ostkaka.
That is pretty impressive. Ostkaka is actually ranked, I believe, number 4 legend right now in North America, and which means probably in Europe he's ranked high as well. So Kabi, a player coming in who is really trying to make a name for himself. Of course, he does have practice partners, and he does practice with Zixo. Zixo is part of that under-the-radar group that Kabi sort of identifies with.
Has Zixo betrayed Ostkaka?
Has he? I don't think so. We mentioned earlier they're pretty good friends. They lived together for quite a while, but I'm sure he had a really good idea of what kind of decks Ostkaka is bringing. And that's one of the advantages you can have for being unknown players. People don't really, they can't get too much information on you. A lot of your information isn't public.
Yeah. So even though Ostkaka, he lost this first match, and even if he loses the next match, there's still a hope for him because, of course, there is the Redemption Tournament.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, all of the players that make it through to the Legendary Series match day that don't win will return for the Redemption Tournament. Basically, 4 separate 7-player brackets will be created out of those 28 players that made it to a Legendary Series match day and did not win. Those matches will take place on the 14th, 15th, 16th, and 17th. And the winner of each bracket, so 4 players, 1 from each of the 4, make it to those LAN finals. Join the winner of each group and the 8 players from the last chance qualifier.
Yeah, so that was the first match of Group A, Ostkaka versus Kabi. The next match will be a returning player, Lead Paint.
Indeed.
And Liquid Savitz.
Liquid Savitz, a player from your own brand. And we actually had a chance to sit down and talk with Savitz a little bit before his matches this week. So why don't we see what he said?